is, there we go. And tonight's talk is about design thinking. And what is design thinking? Design thinking is a methodology that encourages organizations or people to focus on people when you're creating experiences. So whether you're creating a product, a service, or experience, the real focus is to stay on people or humans. And it's really a process where you want to prioritize user needs. And it relies on understanding the user and using iterative hands-on methods to create solutions. And there are really three key phases to design thinking: discovery, prototype, and validation. And each of our speakers today is going to speak to one of those phases in the design thinking process. We're going to kick it off today with Jacqui, who is a product manager at ServiceNow. And she works on ensuring that we have great design systems. And Jacqui has a degree in graphic communication, and she has a love for business, technology, and design. And she's going to help kick this off with talking about how she uses discovery in creating those incredible design systems that ServiceNow has. And, you know, if you want to ask her questions afterwards, you can ask about her talk or about her years and years as a tap dancer. So hopefully you'll remember that when you listen to her talk. Next, we'll have Melissa Wittmayer, and she's going to talk about the prototyping phase. And Melissa currently works at Appfolio, and she entered the design expert or the design world by being in health education and violence prevention. And she designs with a trauma-informed framework that has a passion for designing good. And the fun fact about Melissa that you can ask about or put comments in at any point is she lived in a trailer for 2.5 years, and both in Europe and in the US before she finally set down roots here in San Diego. Next is Alaina Rasheed, and Alaina is going to talk about design validation. And Alaina is a user researcher at ServiceNow, and she really is an expert in user engagement, research, and customer success. I know firsthand that she's very passionate about uncovering and understanding ServiceNow customers, and she works alongside product owners and developers on a daily basis to create those delightful customer experiences. Fun fact about Alaina is she can handle the spice. So she's up for any challenge when it comes to spices. And she let us know that she is growing, I think it's a Carolina Reaper, on her patio. I joked with her, I hope, you know, a rodent or some animal doesn't accidentally get it one day. So that gives you a sense of who our speakers are. And I'm going to let Jacqui kick it off and talk about discovery. So Jacqui, if you want to take over.
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So let me go ahead and share my screen and just kick off by saying I probably won't be doing any tap dancing today, but the possibilities are endless. So we'll see how this all goes. So welcome. As you know, we'll be talking about design thinking today, and I'm going to kick us off by talking about the discovery phase. And again, my name is Jacqui, and I'm a product manager at ServiceNow. I think it's important that I introduce myself a little bit further now that you know I can tap dance. But my name is Jacqui. My mind and how I think and solve problems is around product management. I am a product manager. I get paid to be a PM, but my heart and my soul and how I kind of interact and work is mostly around design. I have a really strong foundation in design. I came from a UX design background in my previous company, very new to the PM space. but design thinking has helped me lay that foundation to solve problems similarly to how I did when I was a designer. And my team that I serve primarily consists of developers. So I have a lot of different kind of multifaceted, cross-functional background, and I love being able to flex all of these different muscles at the same time in my current job at ServiceNow. So I'll kick things off again by starting at the beginning with discovery and talk about how discovery helped me and my team. Before we get into the specific phases, we'll talk about the overview of design thinking. This will be the model that we reference in the next couple of presentations as well. So at the beginning here, this double diamond model, it kind of exemplifies where you can converge and reverge into the design thinking process. First, you have discovery, which is where you think big about different areas of opportunity, ideas, and kind of brainstorming at the beginning. Then we have the definition phase where we narrow down scope, we pick out key areas of opportunity and maybe even write some requirements. And then at the end, we can develop and deliver the product that we want to use based on all of this research and evidence gathering right at the beginning here. So let's talk and hone in about discovery, and then we'll move on to the other parts of the process afterward. So what is discovery? Let's start with some definitions here. Discovery is usually at the beginning of the design thinking process. So before you code or design or even commit to an idea, it's worth spending a lot of time with your team to ensure that the idea or the product that you're building is a viable one, that it will bring value to your customers, that it'll make your company money, and that your team is actually solving for the right problems. The exception to this, and I say usually because you can enter discovery at different parts of the design process. So you could be in the middle of a design thinking exercise or sprint, realize in the middle that you have other areas of discovery and start from the beginning at discovery again. You could be at the end of design thinking and think, hey, we found out a lot of new opportunities we want to explore. And then again, go to discovery. Or probably the worst one is that you get through the design thinking process again, maybe in the middle, and realize that you didn't do discovery the way that thoroughly enough, and realize you have to go back to that discovery process and start all over. So I won't be setting you up for that one. Discovery is a tool to help define the problem space. So this is all about helping your team think about a holistic view of your problem space. This is why research is also really foundational to the discovery phase, because researchers promote the voices of the users across the board. They're making sure that your customers are, their pain points are highlighted and their voices are at the forefront of your solutions. You wouldn't want to do discovery in a silo, create a product that works for your team, and then deliver it to your customers and they don't find any value in it. Discovery is also really different for each team. No team is alike, and no team is set up the way that another one is. Design thinking in general is also kind of like a guideline overall. Halloween is coming up, so this really came to mind. I was excited to include this gift, but there really are no set rules to this. So you can mold the design thinking process to how your team wants. In a Medium article, Carissa Carter from the D School, who kind of pioneered the initial design thinking process, was saying that design thinking is like a recipe where you start from point A, you taste it a couple of times, you add your own spices, maybe you make a gluten-free version, you bring it to your family and they critique you sometimes too. And at the end of all of these adjustments and alterations, at the end, you have a dish that you can bring to Thanksgiving and most of your family will love it. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about what you can do in the discovery phase. So first and foremost, discovery should include representatives from your cross-functional team. So again, for my team, we included PM, design, development, QE, and our research partners in the discovery. Workshops are probably the most common form of discovery. The outcome of this phase or activity is to align with your team on the problem space, talk about the assumptions that you have and opportunities that you see for growth and development. This can take form in many different ways. There's so many online kind of templates. And again, you should mold this to how your team wants to work. I've been on teams where they really wanted to be more brainstorm collaborative, put stickies up on a board. Everything is expressed through words and ideas, and we ended up grouping them and dot voting on them. In my design career, I've been in discovery workshops where it was very design oriented, where the best way to represent our ideas or opportunities were to create wireframes or mock-ups of our product side by side. Words were communicated through pictures. Pictures have 1,000 words. Another activity you should be investing in discovery is research. The goal of research is potentially, most commonly, it's to interview stakeholders and gain customer insight and evidence, getting that value and those pain points from your customers. This is all about learning new opportunities to pursue that were not known to your team before. So first, in the workshop, you gather internally, and then research kind of comes in and helps you support some of your ideas. So engage with your research partners at the beginning and get insight, and be as much a part of research projects as you can if you're a part of the team. We had our developers in all parts of our research, and they got a lot of value from that by hearing the customer's voice and bringing that into their day-to-day work too. And then lastly, I usually skip over this part sometimes, but I remember that readout is really important to communicating your plan and sharing your ideas in your customer supported areas of opportunity with your stakeholders will allow you to actually deliver on some of these and move to the next phase of your design thinking process. So now that we got the definitions and kind of the groundwork out of the way, I'd like to tell you a little story about how discovery worked for my team. Again, there are hundreds of courses and videos and resources on how to do this, but I'll kind of walk you through how we approach the discovery process. So for us, discovery didn't mean inventing the wheel. Usually at this phase, it doesn't mean coming up with a brand new idea or thinking that you have to build a product from scratch. And my team, the start of our discovery process, we had just a really cool idea. Our team had figured out a way to refresh an entire UI of our product in a quick and easy way using the power of our design system to kind of fuel that implementation. So from here on out, I'll call that capability, the product, like a refresher, the refresher, if you will. We delivered this as a part of a release. It was required and it was used only internally. And it kind of breathed more life and joy into our visual design of our UI. After that release, we as a team, though, thought that our customers who use Design System would also want to harness this power. People with this capability would be able to make their lives easier, maybe their processes more efficient by using the refresher. At this point, it was a really big and scary idea. We had a lot of questions, and the only thing we knew for sure is that we needed discovery to start organizing how we wanted to approach this idea. So we started with discovery on our own team. We had a lot of brainstorming sessions initially to gather feedback from the other geniuses on our team who helped us build the refresher. We work best when we're together. That's what works best for my team. So we safely gathered in the office and got to work, again, putting up sticky notes on the board. They were very collaboration oriented, so everything was kind of words based, but our team walked through the values that the refresher currently brought to our company in the release. Then we talked about if we were able to iterate on that, what are some immediate, maybe in the next release enhancements that we can make to the refresher 2.0. This kind of naturally led into conversations about long-term vision for the refresher. Could this be an application that we offer the company to the world? Maybe we have it on the App Store. Could this refresher be used to refresh other design systems and visual languages? Once we had those kind of wild ideas out there, we talked about what would stop us from achieving the most lofty goals. So what couldn't be a part of the refresher's capabilities? What don't we want to work on? What falls out of the ideas that are most important to us? After we had all that insight from our internal team, we engaged with our research partners who helped us reach out to customers who we thought would need the refresher's capabilities. We targeted people and customers that we knew customized their UIs in really crazy ways and in their own kind of hacky ways. So the longest part of the research process was just setting up the questions for our users. The better that you set this up with your research partners, the more information you're likely to get from your customers. Users in those interviews, much like this picture, were showing us how they refresh their own UIs and their pain points at each step of the process. After this, some of the data that we had heard in the interviews were not news to us at all. We knew this was really frustrating without something like the refresher. But what shocked us at the readout of the research was what length that our customers would go to hack their own refresher. So in her readout, our research partner had created a journey map. Journey map, for those who don't know, is a visual representation of your customer's interaction with your product. So this helps us step into their shoes and see our product through their eyes, and we gain insights into common customer pain points and come up with ideas on how to improve those. It turns out this journey map was really extensive and that users went through upwards of 20 different steps to refresh their UI, where we thought it was only 1 or 2. Each of those steps contained many, many pain points and unique parts of their process that they ran into that were really problematic for them. Another assumption we had discussed on our team in the initial brainstorming is that one persona from each company would travel this journey. And for those of you that don't know, a persona is an archetype whose goals and characteristics represent the needs of a larger group of users. So by understanding a persona's expectations, concerns, motivations, it's possible to design a product that will satisfy their needs and make the product more successful. So in the research readout, we were also surprised that there isn't just one persona that would carry out this journey. There's actually 6. So in each of the companies that we interviewed with, there were 6 different personas that were at play trying to solve this 20-step process of refreshing their UI. Each persona had their own background, areas of expertise, and technical strengths and limitations that allowed them or not allowed them to refresh their own UI. So these are findings that we hadn't explored at all. These are people we wouldn't have considered in our solutions. And these are, opportunities that would have been missed without research helping us gather that customer evidence. And this is why it's so fundamental at this point to have research engage in discovery and be inclusive of your audience from the very start. So fast forward to today, our team is at a point that we've mapped our own goals that we discovered together and our customer evidence and narrowed down our scope into key areas of opportunity that we are sharing out with leadership at our company. So at the beginning of this process, you'll remember I had a picture of just one light bulb. We had one idea that was kind of rippling in our brains that we wanted to explore a little further. And now we have all these different ideas. Some are brighter than the others. All of them are different shapes and sizes. They'll be released over time. So you'll see some are closer to you, some are further away. And we know that each one of these ideas is backed by customer evidence, which means we'll be able to serve and solve problems for the majority of our users. So I'll wrap it up by just really saying that you should do discovery and you should do discovery well. Again, there are so many resources to help you do this. Just a Google away. So start off your design thinking process strong. Invest time with your team and with your research teams on discovery. This is a part of convergence in the design thinking process. It's at the beginning, so dream big and dream broad. Don't be afraid of really scary or wild ideas or like there's no, this is kind of a safe spot in the design thinking. Anything is at play here. And build the right solution for your users. Once you focus on which problems you want to solve, your team can invest in focusing on those areas and won't get distracted, and you'll come out the end with a really cool product that's very successful. So I'll pass it off to our next presenter who will continue the design thinking process. Thanks so much for sticking with me.
Awesome. Thank you, Jacqui. All right. Obligatory pause for technical fun sharing things. All right. Now, are we good? Can we see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Awesome. Hi, my name is Melissa. Again, nice to see you all. I wanted to expand just a little bit on that trauma-informed design part for anyone who might be curious what that means. Basically, it means that in addition to using guidelines like design thinking, which I am all with Jacqui on, these are guidelines, they're guidelines, they're guidelines. I'm very guidelines, not rules, just in general in my life. But in addition to using design thinking as a guideline when I go through these things, I also come from a mindset that there are different traumas that people have experienced in the world, whether that be any of the isms, racism, sexism, classism, all of them that go under there. Or violence or anything like that, the things that we develop can impact people, and it'll impact experiences differently in how we engage with users. So even from the standpoint of how we do research with users, making sure that it's not exploitative, and then when we're designing products, making sure that we understand the harm and the risk and potential that might have whenever we design them. So that's kind of what that trauma-informed bit means. But jumping into prototyping, again, here's the guideline. Prototyping lives somewhere around here. Typically, you've defined the problem, you've done the discovery, you've got that storytelling that Jacqui was talking about, and you're jumping into prototyping typically to answer, okay, what's this going to look like? Now we want a little bit of a visual element to this, and there are different ways that we can achieve that. So starting with the most lowest fidelity type of prototype is called a wireframe. So I've kind of broken each of these different types of prototyping into just a bit of information for them. So time for wireframing is pretty low. It doesn't take a lot of time. I'll actually run you through a little exercise when I'm done explaining it on different ways that I wireframe, but if you need something quick and fast, mostly it's done with pen and paper. You can also do it with apps. You can do it digitally, things like that. But it's mostly used, well, I will say I mostly use it whenever it's a very new design concept. Maybe we haven't seen the interaction design or even the UI in our design system. It's very new, and so we kind of have to do something to test it out. And see what that could be like. It's really useful for testing if you've got a lot of interaction heavy designs that, and when I say IXD or interaction design here, I'm talking about how does the app perform? How do the visuals perform based on the user's action? So when the user clicks or swipes or hovers, what happens? If you have a ton of interaction involved in that, with prototyping, the whole point of it is not to build a bunch of stuff before you've been able to test it. But even with high fidelity prototyping and things like that, you don't want to spend a ton of time doing that unless you've validated it a little bit. So let's look at what this can look like. I'm going to switch over to another screen. Are we good there? I might need a visual because I lost you all. Or not a visual, but an audio.
Yep.
Okay, cool, thanks. Okay, cool. So this is an example of, let's say my team wants to do a modal in the app. So I might draw just a nice little modal pop-up and we say, okay, we want them to make two choices. So, well, obviously we're gonna have some sort of text here. Maybe it's asking a question like, what choice do you wanna make? And then we're gonna give them two buttons. And this will be a yes, this will be a no. But what we really wanna do is we kind of wanna nudge them over to answering this other one. So we're going to design this a little bit differently. We're gonna make this a primary button, and that's what we'll do. And then maybe somebody on the team says, actually, in the design system, we don't use buttons for choices, we use radios. And then the button would be like confirming the action. So then I'll say, okay, well, let me go through and move this. Actually, let's move these buttons down. And then I'm actually going to erase this one because we don't need the second one. And we want radio buttons. So we'll say radio 1, radio 2, and then instead of adding another button here, we'll do cancel. And I can do that all with my team as we're talking about like different options and things like that. So for any of the developers in the room, if you don't mind sharing or popping in to the chat, how much time or how frustrating it can be when someone asks you to build something and you build it and you have to throw it away. So in that case, imagine if we had built the first thing and there's 2 buttons and we're like, that's cool. And then I go back and we're, you know, looking at it and we're like, actually, that doesn't fit what we're doing. Let's change it. And then we have to scrap it and go back and rebuild something else. Wireframing is a really nice, easy way to just jump into that with your team and they don't have to wait for you to go mock up something. So that's wireframing. Next thing is mockups, which we're talking about more high fidelity mockups here. This takes more time because you're getting more visuals in. Where wireframes, you don't really need it to look like the app. Mockups are going to look more like visualizing what it's actually going to look like in your app. So this could help for new patterns, or it could be for existing patterns. The purpose is really to give more visual refinement to it. You might actually test these with customers who think, wow, this looks like I'm in the app. And you might have to say, oh, no, you're not here. just a mock-up. But ways you can build these, you can do digital design tools like Sketch, Figma, Adobe XD, all of those fun like vector-based editing tools. Or one of my favorite is actually to jump into the dev tools in browser. So this is a really nice one if you're trying to quickly iterate and you've already got a design system or whatnot, and you just kind of want to give your team an idea of what it'll look, kind of similar to the wireframing. Let's say we're in a meeting and the team says, hey, like nobody's clicking this join us button. We really want to highlight this, make it bigger. Like, what could that look like? Well, I can right click. I'll show you that again. Clicked inspect. And I can actually go in here and be like, okay, what's going on with this button? Maybe we want to make this a little bit bigger. So let's actually go down here and add some more padding. Let's make that 20. And I'm gonna, this is the best part about a live demo. They're terrifying. All right, so we'll get to that in a second. But let's say I want to get to, here we go. This is, we want to add more margin here, just give it a little bit more spacing. Maybe we put 20 here. And let's see, where'd that join us go? Let's find the font and see. Let's try and make that a little bit bigger, actually. Let's do 16. Oh man, sorry. This is like, let's try this one.
I should have given you access to the refresher before this, Melissa.
Oh man, yeah. I'm like, I practiced it all before and I was like, oh, this will be fine. This will be so easy. This is also what's great about live demos. Let's try, how about this? How about border radius? Let's try that. Ooh. Also, I highly encourage you, if you're in a design program right now, to go and play around with websites. All right, there, one thing worked. I made it a round button. Yeah, so you can actually go through and change stuff, try and see what it looks like, how it moves around. But this, so I obviously don't use this with random websites as I'm working on my teams, but it's much easier to work within my website because I can actually take things like take code from our design systems and plop it in there. If someone like for that modal, that's actually, I actually literally did that today. They were like, oh, we need these radio buttons. So I went to my design system, grabbed the code for the radio buttons, threw it in an existing modal and was able to do just a quick mock-up in 5 minutes for them. Whereas if I was going to go recreate that in Sketch or Figma or something like that, I don't want to have to build a whole website in that design tool and then jump back, to the board and the team and whatnot. Like this way I can do it like really quickly. So DevTools, if you're not using it, use it. It's your friend. It's really fun. Even if you're not a designer, I actually, whenever we have any like HTML or CSS issues, that's a lot of the developers on our team are like very back end. So we'll troubleshoot front end stuff together and we'll just jump into DevTools and try to rework it ourselves and figure out where the issue is. So it's very good for diagnosing too. Anyway, all right, that's my spiel on DevTools. Okay, next to the most high fidelity prototypings are interactive prototypes. And really that's like very what it is, it's interactive. So like you can see here on the example, when you click something or when the user swipes something, an action happens. So these have much more time investment within them. So I'm not even going to show you a live demo because that would be terrifying. But you can also use digital design tools. You can actually ask, depending on what the needs are for the development team, but a lot of my developers will actually prototype something that we can interact with and actually throw customers in, depending on the need. So because it's such a high time investment, you want to make sure that this whole process that we're walking through, that it doesn't look like this. Because if I've done this before where I'm like, I'm following the process, I'm doing step 1, I'm doing step 2, and doing step 3, and I will prototype something, I'll put a bunch of fancy clicks and things like that, and then we'll get to the part where we're validating it. And the question is, okay, what are we testing? And I'm like, I don't know, but I just I just built this fancy prototype and you can come click in it. It's really fun. And they're like, cool, but how are we going to test it? So really, when you're going through this process, Alaina's going to jump into more of like what validation is and how you do that. But all of these things really need to be held together because you can build a prototype, validate it, discover something in that process, need to go back to the discovery process, and then go back to validating, go back to prototyping. You can jump around these stages however, but it's really important that before you start doing some of these high investment things, that you are keeping that validation and that those testing needs in mind. And the last thing I'll say about interactive prototypes or more specifically like coded prototypes that a development team is building out, the only times that we usually use those is when it's very, very critical for testing that the users see their own data, their own live data in that, that simulation. And you also want to make sure that if they're seeing their live data, they're not clicking something that could be destructive to actual data. So just some things to keep in mind that prototyping needs can shift and change based on that validation stage. And without further ado, as I've alluded to validation, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, as was just alluded to, here, I'll pull up my slides. I think you're starting to get a sense maybe of how design and research really need to be working together at every stage. So if you're, if I'm going to go do a design validation on a prototype, the prototype needs to be set up in the way of like the questions that we're going to ask and what we're really going to test. So I'll go into design validation, why it's so important. You can keep in mind everything that Jacqui and Melissa have talked about today and how that's going to go hand in hand with research. So I'm a user experience researcher at ServiceNow. One of my favorite parts of my job is that we are also, in the world of UX, so end user focused. So we have a lot of conversations with a lot of customers or employees or whoever it is who's working on that digital experience. And we get so connected with what they want to do in the experience and what their hopes are. We ask them magic wand questions. If we gave you a wand, what would you snap your wand and make better in your experience? And then once those improvements are made, it's really clear to see the impact of your work. So I'd say that's my favorite part. So when you think about making things that customers love, you can think of a lot of brands out there that are really beloved, so beloved that you don't even necessarily need a name with their logo to understand what they are. You don't need to think too deeply to understand why you love them. Maybe you can't even articulate why you love them. They're just that seamless that it doesn't take that deep level of thinking to analyze their success. So I'll have you go ahead and think about a product that you love. First, some of you, it may be really obvious that you love the design of something, or you love how few steps you can complete something in. For some of you, it might be a product that you're just like, I love it and I don't know why I love it. That's fine. Somebody's put a lot of work into making it that way for you. So if you have any ideas about a product you love, go ahead and throw them in the chat. It'll be fun to share. And we'll go ahead and start talking about how you get there and what makes customers love a product. So one is that you're getting some value out of it, right? You're using it for a reason, and you're getting out of it what you intended to get out of it. And sometimes it's fulfilling needs that you didn't even know you had. Anticipating your needs is just so simple, so intuitive. It just really makes things easy and meets your expectations, sometimes exceeds them. Emotionally resonates, makes you feel some type of way about it, makes you feel happy, makes you feel at ease, at peace. In general, just something that changes the user's life for the better. So how do you get there? How do you get to that product that you love? Maybe one of those were dropped in the chat. Well, you don't have to hike through this mountain range in Hong Kong, but there are a lot of steps to it, or rather a lot of options you can think of to try and get there. But realistically, it's all wrapped up in design, user research, and all the effort that goes into understanding the end user. So with research specifically, there's tons of different methods that you can utilize, activities that you can test. You'll see, I think actually in all three of our presentations today, we've referenced the Nielsen-Norman group. Resource Alert, it's a great website to check out, start looking through some of the materials that they have. And today I'll talk to you specifically about one of the methods, which is design validation. So I want to start off talking about how you get started with the design validation. You're going to really need to understand what it is that you're trying to get out of customers, what you want to understand about their experience, what the designers were going for and had in mind when they were creating it, what's possible for development, what the product owners are hoping for, what the business needs of the business are, tons of different things. So your stakeholders could be any of those people. I'll start with an example here of if I were just talking directly to the design team. I would want to know, what goals they had in mind when they were creating this design, kind of understand what needs were presented to them when they created the design. So they might tell you something like, hey, yeah, we're creating this coffee mobile app. We want it to be really quick and easy for a user to order coffee. And we want them to feel really confident that they're going to get that coffee in the exact way that they specified, because we've made it so easy for them to make those specifications in the app. So then, yeah, you would be grateful for that sort of context, and you'd want to understand a little bit further. Okay, so what should we be really understanding from our users? What are the big questions in your mind? What aspects were you uncertain about when you were creating this design? Sometimes you're considering a radio button or a yes, no button, and you don't know which way to go. And that's something that you should be aware of going into talking to users. So then they might tell you, okay, yeah, I really want to understand their mental model for how they want to select the type of coffee beans, the size of the cup, what types of milk, and any other specifications, and specifically what order should those steps be in? Are there any other options that they need? Is there anything that we aren't considering? So then you tell them, great, thank you for all of that. I'm on it. And you include them on those user sessions so that they can listen, sit in, and be part of the whole process of understanding the end user. So most important part of this slide, though, is repeat with all stakeholders. That was an example of talking to a design team, and there are many people who might be affected by the insights that you get from these customers or users. So how do you find those users? First off is just focusing on the idea that you want to be talking to people who would be real live examples of your users. So it could be your mom if it's that coffee app, but if it's a support portal, maybe your mom doesn't really touch that very often. You want to talk to a customer administrator. So you really want to think about who's going to be the real live example of that. Second is meet your users where they're at. If it's a coffee app, you want to meet them at a coffee shop, online on a Facebook page. Maybe you have something going on with school. Just kind of think about where you're going to find them, either online or out in the real world, and go to them. Once you have a few, once you get started with that, you can start asking for referrals to others and kind of snowball into a good amount of users for you to test. And when you're thinking about how many users to test, I think two important things. One is test with multiple users. Don't just stop at one or two. And multiple types of users. So if you have like a front end app and a back end app, maybe it's like a buyer experience on Mercari and a seller experience on Mercari. You want to make sure to test those two user types. But keep in mind that, once you start testing with about 5 users is when you start to see on this curve, you get up to 5 and you're finding like kind of 80% of the usability problems. So you can overdo it and you can overextend yourself and spend, go beyond your bandwidth for doing something when you don't need to. So it's a good rule of thumb, this kind of rule of 5 from Nielsen-Norman. So the design validation process as a whole, I think we've talked about understanding the focus of the design. Assembling your moderator script. This is another step where once you have a sense of the focus of the design, you can put that together. You can be talking at all times, circling back with design and making sure that click path prototype is working for you. And then you have to review all of this, your whole moderator script, your research guide in general, your whole plan really with your stakeholders. I think you don't want to surprise people and you want to give them the opportunity to influence where you're going with your research. And one great way to do that is reviewing, your plan. But another really awesome way to do that I actually spent my whole day doing today is running pilot tests and inviting stakeholders to sit in on those so that they get a real live example of what it is that you're going to be doing with this research. Some overall best practices I'll go through, just kind of like the top of mind things for me. One is when you're interviewing users, you want to make them feel as comfortable as possible and build rapport. You don't want to just jump in and be like, okay, so the purpose of today's study is blah, 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 and we're going to record this and let's go. You want to ask them, they're people that you're meeting. So you want to say hi, introduce yourself, ask them where they're joining from. Maybe they're joining from Singapore, maybe they're joining from San Diego. Ask them how their weekend was, if the weekend was recent or anything that they're looking forward to in the coming weekend or after their workday. This really leads to, I think actually the most valuable thing that I get out of it from a selfish kind of point of view is that when I reach out to them again, they remember me and they are willing to respond to my emails. One of my participants actually still sends me email updates on his community barbecue events. And that guy never says no to an interview. He'll send me photos of like his family and all the food they made and people smiling. So that's a really great one. Second, and I think some of you may have heard this a lot, is just avoiding leading questions. You want the user to really kind of, think from a blank slate about what it is that they want to tell you. You don't want to limit where they're going to go with it by introducing your own bias into the situation. Let them surprise you with where they're going to take the conversation. And third is just, ask open-ended questions. So that's the opposite of a leading question, right? You're giving them potential to go on a tangent. And if you have room for that built into your study, great, let those tangents happen. Sometimes you might not have that bandwidth, but when you can, and you've built that rapport with them, that's when they're going to feel comfortable just kind of thinking aloud and going into detail on things and giving you insights that you may not have otherwise heard. Some final tips here on extracting those insights. So once you've completed those interviews, what do you do with them? First and foremost, I think when you're looking at these insights across these interviews and you're forming categories to, you put bullet points on a PowerPoint to present to your stakeholders, let the insights that you received form those categories. Let them form those bullet points, not the other way around. Don't try to fit your insights into the prefab boxes that you think they might fall into. Second, keep in mind, it can be really time consuming to go back afterwards and, oh, I need a quote that supports this insight so that people can really get a good sense of, what the user is saying about this. It's great to note those as you go. You can use the Zoom transcript or use your notes if you have a note taker, or if you're watching the recording afterwards. Note down any awesome quotes or anecdotes. Those kinds of things really help communicate those insights. And the actual method, there are plenty of methods out there for getting those insights together, kind of analyzing them. One of them is affinity diagramming. Literally, I'm just out here with Post-it notes all the time. This doesn't have to be in person though. I don't know if you've heard of Miro, M-I-R-O, but that's a great place where you can have virtual sticky notes and work with people on a live kind of online whiteboard. Though I must say it's really fun to do in person. So hopefully you get to do that. And lastly, just make sure that your insights are telling a story. You don't want a presentation that's like, okay, the first thing we heard is this, and the second thing we heard is this, and the third thing we heard is that. What you want is to really help people understand the journey that the user's on, what kind of road bumps they might run into, and just get that big picture of the user's needs, their pain points, their hopes and dreams for the experience that you're working with. So thank you everybody for your time today. This was a lot of fun. And here's just like a handful of 6 or 7 helpful links and books. And I think, if we all put our heads together, we could probably come up with 100 of them, but these are the ones that came to my head.
Awesome. That was amazing. Thank you, Jacqui, Melissa, and Alaina. I kind of forgot to tell people, if you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat, but feel free to either put in the chat or speak up if you have some questions. So we have a few minutes for that.
I have a question for anyone really, but I can kick things off. What happens in some of previous design thinking workshops? We didn't have access to a designated research team. I'm asking the panelists, or maybe even some participants, what you've done in the past when you didn't have a dedicated research partner.
Did it myself. Yeah, we kind of operate, we do have a research team, and that's something that we're kind of in the talks of, is integrating them more into like the day-to-day stuff. But I think it's a lot of consulting with them and just trying to figure out, like, usually it's like, hey, this is the problem that we're trying to solve, and this is kind of the direction we're going in. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, if they weren't even there, it just always comes back to the user for me, and trying to figure out, like, if a lot of our problems are focused on the business, how is that impacting the user, and how is that also good for the user? And if we're, like developing things or trying to test things, like always thinking about their experience first and what they need out of this.
Love that. Yeah, any other advice?
I think I was just going to speak up. That's kind of how I got my start in user research. I was a product owner, and there wasn't a researcher headcount or somebody. And so I just started having those conversations with customers, and just having those customers and being conversations and being curious. I think anyone can really start it. Yeah, and I encourage people to have those conversations with customers, because it really is a team that needs to understand users, in my opinion, and to make a real cultural shift, or make those products that Alaina said that people are obsessed with. It's not just the designers and the researchers that care about what the users say. It's everybody that does.
Cool, thank you.
And Alaina, when is your Carolina Reaper going to be ready and ripe?
So it was supposed to bloom this summer, but it didn't. But the plant is still alive, so maybe next summer. I'll let you know in a year.
And Melissa, what made you, after going on a camper across all these areas, how did you land in San Diego?
We made a list, and that was when we went somewhere warm, somewhere not too far of a flight from my family, somewhere near a city, but also very, very close to live water, preferably a beach.
Yeah.
And that pretty much narrowed it down to Costa Rica and San Diego. And at the time, it just would have been too hard to become an expat. So
yeah,
we chose San Diego.
Very cool. And any performances, Jacqui?
No, absolutely not. There's a couple good questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a question from Jamedine asking, what do you all like the best, and least about what you do?
I can start off, since I already told you what I like the best is, really working with that end user and seeing the result of the work. What I like the least actually came up today in a fun chat I was having with my coworker, and I was telling her we were having all these, sometimes research projects, they go off without a hitch, and sometimes the coordination between all the different teams causes a lot of trying to figure out when you can start things and when you can start scheduling things. And I was telling her that somebody could write an entire book on just timing of making an experience come to fruition in the digital space. Like all that it takes with the team's coordination and getting everybody on calls when they have busy schedules, getting approval from the people you need, the stakeholders, scheduling with customers, getting people cancellations, rescheduling. I think I typed up this whole list of like 20 items, and she was like, you should write that book. And I said, no way. So anyway, I think that's my least favorite part, is just trying to make sense of all that.
Yeah, it's always challenging when you have to deal with a lot of people and stakeholders and coordinating everything. And Melissa or Jacqui, what is your favorite and least part about what you do?
Yeah, I was going to mention, if we're talking about design thinking, my favorite part of that process is actually talking to the customers. Surprise, surprise. But I remember Aileen and I actually were on a couple of user research interviews, and sometimes we get a lot of very enthusiastic customers, people who like to use language sometimes too, and makes things a little spicy. But my favorite part of that process is talking to the customers. I liked what you were saying, Alaina, about if you have an opportunity to let them go on tangents, that's usually when you get really good feedback. Least favorite part is sometimes this takes a lot of time. I'm a very, but I am a very impatient person. So I wish this could, maybe Alaina, I'll have to read your book about timing and learn some tools and tricks and tips, but it could potentially take a lot of time. So I've learned how to balance and time box some activities. Discovery is also something that could go on forever if you don't realize when is a good time to call it and move on to the next phase. So I tend to be very wary of that as well.
For me, my favorite part is the step right after what you're talking about, Jacqui, where it's you've got all these data points and you're just kind of sitting around and you're like, I've got this problem and now I've got all these data points and now I need to kind of zoom out and figure out what the emerging themes are. And I love just figuring out those themes and being like, okay, these are going to be our guidelines as we're developing this. Like, here are their pain points. This is what they need from us, like things like that. Because that's the kind of, once we develop that, that's the stuff that I feel like gives me purpose in what I'm doing. Kind of gives me like really clear goalposts. My least favorite part is recruiting, because I feel like it's back to like cold calling sales days, where if anyone has never been in sales, I highly recommend it just for like a small second, because it is so painful for me. I should own that. It was very painful for me, but it was a very good learning experience. But every time I do recruitment, I feel like I'm back in those days, and I just, oh man, the cold calls, cold emails they're rough.
Actually, yeah, I would like to update my least favorite part to recruiting.
Yeah, if someone could go solve that problem for us, I will pay for it. I will pay lots of money.
There are some good tools that alleviate a little bit of it. Like, we just started using Calendly. So at least I don't have to, I used to write out, okay, I'm free from 8 to 9 a.m. on Pacific time on this day, and then also 9 to 10 a.m. And it was just like tedious, and it was tedious for somebody to respond to that email. And so Calendly is nice.
Eileen had a good question in the chat too.
Yeah. I can ask it. Alaina, what did you say that app you're using? Calendly?
Calendly, CALENDLY. And yeah, essentially what it does is it kind of takes your Outlook calendar and identifies what free spots you have. So you can just send a link out to have people schedule some time in your available slots.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
It's beautiful.
My question was really on behalf of my daughter. You know, she's kind of been asking about UX research and what it entails, and excited by what I told her about it. But she's doing a undergraduate in data science and statistics. And I was wondering, if you wanted to become a UX researcher, what would be good next steps?
I don't know if there's one good answer to that, but I'll give the one that was relevant for me. I think that after college, you're totally ready to take on an internship and start learning the ropes with UX research. The one thing I really feel like I got from grad school was that in college, I was held to kind of like a rubric kind of standard. And so you learn to do your work to the standards of a rubric instead of, you know, really shooting for the stars. And then when you get put into a more professional program, like a graduate program, it's no longer, did you tick the boxes? It's, did you do good work? And so you kind of get evaluated from that standpoint. And I think that was a big change for me. And it was something I learned a lot from. And so for me, graduate school, and I specifically did cognitive psychology, learned a lot about survey techniques in that program.
Cool. Interesting. Thank you.
And I saw a question, but I don't can't find it anymore. That was asking about the interview process for a UX researcher.
Was
That
it,
would be
what is the interview process like? Is that what?
yeah, yeah. That's what it said. I can't find it anymore. But that would be an interesting question. I don't even know like how would it work.
I think typically at ServiceNow, when you're being interviewed as a researcher, there is, you will have a panel interview where you would present some work that you've done, some research that you've done. So hopefully you have a portfolio. And if you don't, if you can still present your work in a PowerPoint. I have hired people that have just shown me a project in PowerPoint and talked about it thoroughly. So, you know, it's nice if you've got a portfolio, an online portfolio, but it's not an absolute must. So you'll probably have a panel interview where you walk through your work, and then you'll have interviews with different people on the team. So it might be a product owner, a business analyst, a fellow researcher, a designer. So people can get a sense of what your skills are and what you're like, and then you also get a sense of what the culture is like at the company. And really, you know, when you think about if that portfolio or that piece of work that you're going to present, it really comes down to the process. You want to show that you use those design thinking techniques because they're really the bread and butter of user research, and you know how you engage with customers or users and empathize with them, use the right methods, and then you know what your outcomes were, and you know what your lessons learned were, because not every piece of research or any project you do is 100% successful. There's always things that you'll learn in retrospect, and that's something that you want to get across when you come to an interview.
There's something in the chat. It wasn't a question, and I don't think Claude is here anymore, unless they are. But they mentioned the presentation was interesting, even though they don't have the type of big team or resources that we have available. And I think we are coming from like this presentation, we have a PM, we have a UX researcher, we have a UX designer. But I also went through this whole process whenever it was just me in my design program building like an app. So the discovery and everything, like I think what we've kind of presented is like a very like ideal, and like this is how we kind of like dive through it. But there are definitely ways that you can make these guidelines work for you if you are a one-person team or if you're a team of 20. So they are meant to be flexible. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, and also see if any of the other panelists kind of had an experience of being a little bit scrappier with the guidelines.
Yeah, I can only remember in my design career having to do like what you were saying, Melissa, like do it myself. It just took a lot of time out of my own schedule to do a full-fledged like design research program by myself. I still usually needed support in recruiting because that is the worst. But yeah, I can think of other opportunities to like either in school or in other projects where design thinking didn't go really smoothly and we had to pivot really fast. I said something in my presentation where you could be in the middle of your design thinking process and realize like, oh, I don't think we're solving the right thing, or I think we went down this path and we found this in research, but maybe it's not viable for the majority of our users. Or you come to a testing point later in the process and you're like, this is testing horribly, we need to figure out something else. So this is definitely not a smooth process. It's it could get a little bit messy, but that's half of the fun of it too. You have to evolve and kind of work with your team, listen to how they want to work, and listen to your customers. Like that's the root of all of this, is to make sure that we're solving for them.
Great. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
I think a lot of the tools that were mentioned as far as I know, are kind of newer tools. Like I know Figma is really popular now, but I think it's kind of newish. Same with Miro. So kind of along that lines of these new things that are coming out, is there anything else that's changing or improving in the like UX research or design thinking space that you're excited about that's coming up?
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like my interviews have gotten a lot more open. Like I think more people, more customers are know about the interview process and are really prepared to be open and honest with you. As I was mentioning before, we've been in a couple spicy interviews where they really opened up all the way and let us know all of their feelings. So I feel like it's just becoming more known to anyone outside of the design org who may not know what design thinking is, but knows what kind of feedback to give in an interview. That's been super helpful, just generally. Do y'all have tools or things that have helped you guys?
I definitely have tools, but I kind of want to expand on what you're saying because I feel like we've been feeling that too. Something interesting that came out of the pandemic and everyone shifting over to Zoom and everything like that is this like larger understanding of what's going on in people's lives. And we got these messages of like, this is how, like, whenever you're doing a call or when you're reaching out to people, make sure you check the weather in their area, make sure they're okay. Like when there were fires, when there were floods, when there was like all these storms or the heat waves and things like that. There was a lot going on in 2020. And people kept saying like, okay, we now need to do these things. And I found it really interesting because everything was happening to everyone for like one of the first times. But that doesn't mean that our users weren't having bad days before or stuff like that wasn't happening before. We just weren't checking in on it and we weren't really like reaching out to them for it. So the thing that I kind of like, I see evolving and see changing is this more understanding for meeting people where they're at. And I hope that the day that everything goes away, TBD, that we really hold on to that still. And that becomes one of our values and something that we work with consistently and not forget after, this is a thing of the past.
Yeah, I love that. I think Alaina was saying it too, like, checking in on the, as you're talking to people, like realizing everyone's a person and everyone's going through situations. We all had a common situation that was awful that we're still dealing with. But, like you were saying, wildfires, like the person, who you're talking to might be in some area where there's a wildfire threatening them. And, just recognizing that and the human in some ways, I think, some people said, well, we've become less, human because we're all on Zoom now, we're not seeing each other. But in some ways I felt people were pausing more and asking and, and like Jacqui was saying, like being more real maybe, because their lives were, that we were all going through this thing together,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think just also being responsive and adaptive based on what might be going on. A very poignant example of this was I was on a call with a customer once who, no wildfires, no earthquakes, but he accidentally deleted his entire email inbox and could not figure out how to recover it. And he was almost on the verge of tears. And he was very stressed out. And I had a very full hour-long interview to pack in. But it didn't matter. He was stressed out and he wasn't asking to jump off the call and deal with it. He was kind of indicating that he wanted to talk about it and kind of talk through he was just kind of scrambled. So I think that's just one example of like a time where you have to think like, how can I adapt and be a real person, even though I'm just sitting on a computer screen.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like empathy is a really big strength to have in this role, in this field. And I think let me take a step back. I think it's a good strength to have in any field, in any role, like even software development. It sounds like it can be especially useful to be able to tap into that as you're doing interviews with other people.
Yeah, it really is one of the core principles of design thinking is empathy for the user and really understanding them and not making the assumptions of what their needs are. It's, empathizing and understanding. So I agree.
Yeah, I come from a crisis intervention background before this, and I've used those skills so much with my team, and not just like you said, it's important for everyone on the team to have empathy. I think I kind of like assume my role as the person to help remind us whenever we're during stressful times. So if somebody misses a user, like usability test, and the team is kind of, talking crap, like, oh, like, why do people always flake on us and things like that? And I'm like, well, actually, they're going through an ice storm right now and their area doesn't have power, like kind of bringing it back and like, let's get out of this crisis mode. Like everything is going on, and like, take a deep breath, think about the bigger picture.
Yeah. Well, I think we're at time. Let us know if there's any final questions. But this has been awesome. I really want to thank the panelists. There was a lot of work that they put in it. Really awesome information, and really gave us a glimpse into design thinking. So thank you. And thank you for once again to San Diego Women Who Code for partnering with us on this event. We look forward to doing it again. We were having these fun Friday afternoon calls for a number of weeks where we connected, and we'll have to find a way to maybe do it in person.
Yeah, we need to figure it out how to keep in touch. It was really nice collaborating with you all. And before you all go, we want to announce our next event. So thank you again to Alaina, Melissa, and Jacqui for the awesome presentation into designing spaces for the collaboration. It's also great, always great to work with you. And like you said, Teena, let's keep in touch. So for Women Code, our next event, it's not on Meetup yet, but it will be the second event for our speaker series. And this time we will be collaborating with Learn Academy, and we will have a panel on how to enter into tech. So our panelists will have a different background on how to get into tech. So they will share their experience, and it will be a great opportunity to ask questions to them, and also to Learn Academy that they've been supporting a lot of students through their bootcamp. So they have a lot of insight on what is a good way to break into tech. And then Women Who Code Global, it's actually hosting their annual conference, Connect Forward. This year, obviously, would be online on November 18 and 19, and there are information about that on our meetup page. So the best way to keep up to date with all our upcoming events is checking our meetup page. We update it often, and the November 9th event will be there soon. I don't know if you have anything you want to share for designing spaces and upcoming events.
Actually, I don't know if we have any events on the calendar yet. We hope we will in 2022, and hopefully in person. So nothing yet, but you can join our mailing list. You can direct message me or Julie or